Hey y'all, it is Andrea here at VW Family Farm, and today we're going on a little trip. Hi.
Hey. Lost its rattle.
Lost its rattle?
Lost its rattle.
We're making a video about grass.
Grass?
Grass.
You want to eat grass?
Nope, but that is one of our forms of grass.
Yep, that's a lot of ryegrass. That's what we, extra seed we had from when we planted the cow pasture that I went ahead and broadcast out here too, and it's made a lot of good hay. Now the sun's going down and it's really humid out here. It's drawing moisture back in it. When the sun was right ahead, you could come out, you'd pick it up, and it rattled. I mean, loud. Starting to get a little green tint, which that don't always matter, but there's moisture in it. I can feel it.
So you're done for the day. So today's video is all about grass. You can see on that last clip, Ben is out here in our hay field. He's been out here baling hay. It is May 11th. I think this is probably a record for the earliest we've baled hay on our first cutting probably ever. It's crazy. We have so much grass so early. You can see these big, beautiful bales that he just drove all over this field in our tractor and baled up. Just really excited. Those are what we feed in the winter when the rotational grazing is done and we have no grass to feed. This is our winter feed for our cows. So we live on a cattle farm. We have a little small homestead. We started on about 5 acres, and then a few years ago we started a pretty big cattle operation raising grass-fed beef. So that's what we do, that's who we are, it's what we love, and we also are passionate about the land. This land has been in Ben's family, and now we're our family for years, generations in fact, and so we're very passionate about this land that we've been entrusted to take care of, along with other members of Ben's family that we all help out and work together. And it means a lot to us. It's important. And so rotational grazing is what I want to talk to you guys about, and how that can literally save your farm. So before we move out of this field onto the next pastures, I want to just point out this field right here. This pasture is about a 12-acre field where we cut hay, and it has a lot of potential. There's sometimes that the ingredients have been perfect and we might bale up 50 bales on this, and then there's times that it just doesn't hardly produce anything at all. So we have put our cows on this and let them eat and graze. We've intentionally let it grow up and let them graze on it some, so that not only are they eating it, they are leaving behind manure, which is nature's perfect fertilizer, and helping this land regenerate. As you can also hear, Ben said we have put some seeds into this land. We are working with land that was kind of stripped and kind of suffering, and so we are doing some things to not only rotationally graze, but to help it along, which is spread some seeds and get some grasses that do well in our area. I would call them native grasses, but there are seeds we're introducing, but they are native grasses to this area. They do well around here.
I've been praying for 25, but I tell myself I'm gonna count when I'm kicking them out, and I never do.
Okay, so let's count this field, and then we're gonna move on and show them some other parts of the farm. We got 22, and he's probably got one more bale to bale up back here. So we didn't hit 25, but that is really, really good. And a lot of that is due to moving the cows back here, proper land management. And when I mentioned we got 50 bales before, that was not the first cutting, because there's different grasses that you will cut, different thicknesses and all that as you go throughout the year. That was more like a second cutting. So 23 for the first cutting, those early grasses, I personally think is pretty fantastic.
This is one of your favorite parts of the farm, isn't it?
It is probably my favorite, this trail through the woods. I just love it. All right, so this that I'm about to show you is probably my biggest proponent for, this is not necessarily rotational and grazing, but what cattle can do for land and for building up your ecosystem in your soil and just for building your soil in general. So last year when we came back here checking our hay fields for the early cutting, I don't know if you remember, but it was like a gut punch, honestly, because we drove around and there was dirt patches. It was so bare. We realized right then we did not have a good environment back here. Everything that the previous people who'd been leasing our farm, I remember you explained it to me because I was like, what in the world happened?
Well, they sprayed some to kill some grasses, but just constant disking it up. They got rid of our fescue. It got rid of several different grasses, but
and they would kind of seed it, is what you told me.
Yeah,
so they would just get what they wanted.
Yeah, it was kind of like row crop farming. They was growing oats. During the early spring, they would grow ryegrass to cut for silage.
Right.
But they was constantly tilling up the earth, which in turn kills all your soil microbes in there. So. And
you lose your carbon and all that every time you till. So, and what Ben was telling me was that, like, we had a good first year or two of doing the cows and cutting our own hay. And I said, well, why did we have grass and now we don't? And he was just explaining to me the seeds that were in the seed bank, like we still had some seeds there. And just when those kind of grew and expired, we had nothing.
Well, like where they would grow ryegrass out here, it'd be kind of like this right here. When they would go in to cut it, some of these seeds would fall and hit the ground. Then they would grow back, and we had a good cutting that first year.
But not enough to be like completely seeding our fields or anything.
Because really when you're doing hay, you don't want to let all your grasses grow out to seed, head out to seed like that, because the cows don't like it as well. They like this small, fresh, tender.
And not only do they like that, that is the nutrients and the powerhouse nutrition is still in the leaves when it's small. It's not went to the seeds, and you haven't lost anything. That's like optimum conditions when they're eating it as small tender grass. So last year we just had a kind of an awakening, and we were like, wow, we are kind of in bad shape here. We don't have a good early cutting, and then if you followed our channel, we didn't have good late cuttings either because armyworms came in. We didn't know what we were necessarily doing there, and we didn't manage that necessarily 100% properly. So we had a bad year, and so we realized
we've always had that mindset of we don't want to spray chemicals on the farm. But in certain instances,
like the armyworms,
you're gonna have to spray, or you're liable to lose everything.
Right. So we realized that we needed a plan. So the plan, first off, that we came up, do I have something on me?
Yeah.
The first thing you said and that we decided to do was put the cows here for the winter. So after the armyworms destroyed it all, that was what you said we needed to do, was move everybody back here.
There wasn't enough grasses left to go ahead and try to get a cutting of hay. There just wasn't before the end of the year. So what we did is we let that grass grow up and then put the hot wire around it while it was still green and move the cows back here and utilize this back here as pasture, standing hay, and then just kept them back here all winter, rolling out hay, building up the soil.
Right. So not only did we...
you're putting the seeds out of your hay bales.
Right. So, and you're putting out, like if you have bought your hay, which we had to buy a lot of hay, and they have spent money on fertilizers, you're capturing some of their fertilizer that they fertilize is outrageously expensive, especially right now. So you're capturing some of that and feeding your soil. I just want to stress the importance of, we put the cows back here to fertilize it, and we rolled out the hay. Building
up your soil, building up the carbon in it.
Yes.
And then them fertilizing it all winter. And then we had Lane at the end of winter, when we moved the cows off, we had Lane drag behind the truck and spread all of those clumps of manure all over the farm.
Right. So we're not just fertilizing the literal place where the cow patty is, we spread it all over the field. So let's just walk through here. It's just amazing the grasses that have grown just from properly managing it for 1 year.
So one thing I want to stress is I did mess up, and the fact is I didn't pull the cows off of here soon enough. They had the grass eat down real low, so that's why we're not cutting this right now and we're cutting other fields, is because they had eat it so short it's taking longer to catch up, which in turn is not that bad of a thing, because now I've got a little bit of time between fields and not having to do everything at once.
Look at this, Ben. It's waist high. That's crazy.
I really want to spray and kill this, but I don't know if I'm gonna. I want to see if time management, good ground management, will get rid of it eventually. But this is buttercup. It is to me, it's an invasive weed that is not good for anything. It's toxic to cows, which they're not going to eat it if they don't have to. They've got all this other grass to graze on. But not only is it toxic to cows, it can be toxic to pigs, it can be toxic to sheep. So it's not good for nothing.
And what's hilarious is these yellow flowers, or buttercup flowers, are everywhere on our farm, and is probably the most noticed thing when people come to our farm. Is they're like, that is gorgeous. We love the yellow flowers. So, and we're like, we don't.
We do like these flowers. That is a white ladino clover. Good for cows, good for bees, good for soil. That's what we're looking for.
So I want to take you to one final stop on this grass video, and that is actually to the cows. Let's go.
So Andrea's not brave enough to try to jump over, straddle it. She rolls under it. But you hadn't got shocked that way either, have you?
Nope.
Oh! No,
Ben,
I'm kidding.
Quit.
Oh.
We came to look at grass, but we have a baby. So the last stop is where we have our cows.
So this is about a 100-acre pasture, and we've got a hot wire going down the center and one on each side. So we just rotate these cows in a circle around the field, and most of the time we'll do about a 2 to 3 acre paddock at a time, and that gives plenty of time by the time we get back to the paddock that they were first on. Gives plenty of time for the grass to regrow. It gives plenty of time for the manure to break down, the flies to lay their eggs, and all the other insects, pests in there to kind of come, go, worms. It cuts down on the worm load on the pasture. So this is proven very effective.
So you can do the math. It takes about 5 to 7 weeks for them to rotate back to a paddock. That gives time for it to be sanitized, meaning that it cuts down on the parasites like Ben was talking about. And the biggest thing is for the grass to recover. So I want to show you a couple of things about what you're looking for if you're new to rotational grazing. We have new babies running all around us, so it's pretty funny. But and I also wanted to mention, I know people are going to ask about how many cows is that on this size pasture. There is 80 here right now, 80 head, but probably about 20 of those are calves. So that is about 60 full-grown animals, either cows or new heifers that we're bringing into our program, things like that. So that's about how many animals that is. And this is pretty much what you would call mob grazing. They travel in a mob, in a herd. That's what cows do. If you watch them, if you just didn't fence them in and you watch them out in the wild, they're gonna stay in a herd and they're gonna just continuously keep moving to fresh grass. So we're just trying to mimic that and catch the benefits from it as well.
Kind of like what the buffaloes did in the wild.
Exactly.
They just eat, and they'll take a bite and they'll keep going. They'll take a bite and they'll keep going. But also in this, we're wanting to concentrate them to a small area to try to eat some of the less desirable grasses. But if you'll see right here, they're out here, they're not eating this buttercup, but they're eating other things. They're eating it down. They're just not going to touch that buttercup. But what they are doing in certain places, they're trampling all this in the ground, and building the carbon up in the soil.
So it's a fine balance. If you can get as technical with this as you want to, but like Ben was showing, they're going to eat the desirable things, and they're going to eat them down as pretty low if you leave them very long. We're on a 24-hour rotation. Our son works for us and he rotates them every morning. Every 24 hours they're moving. But I also want to show you something, some of those good desirable grasses if they get a little bit too big. So you can see this head of ryegrass right here. This was a really good stalk of grass until it got too big. And then you can see they have left it alone. And there's several of those here.
Same thing here with the fescue. They're not eating out, or they're not eating the headed out plants. But they move right over here. And this was clover. They mowed it down. They may not eat right here for a certain reason. A cow may have peed there. I don't see any manure, but there's a reason they skipped that, but they eat this down real quick.
So if we left them longer than 24 hours, they would start to eat some of these things that were less desirable, the headed out grasses and things like that. But we are not looking to go down to bare dirt. That is not our goal. That is never going to be our goal. That is not the type of grazing we're trying to do. We're trying to move them while there is still grasses here. And those are already went to seed, so those seeds will ultimately fall to the ground and just start the cycle all over.
But as you see, just on the other side of the hot wire, this is the area or the direction they're going. Look at how thick and lush that field is. Yes, there is buttercup in there, but they're going to eat around it. I mean, all that clover. Like I said, there's ryegrass. Here's some of the seed we planted. That should be either wheat or cereal rye.
So yes, while there is buttercup out here, Ben, would you not say there's so much less buttercup than there used to be? And other things are starting to take over as well. Buttercup is not the only thing we had, which is how it was for a year or two.
Yes, it has improved tremendously out here.
Yes. So as we were talking about, you can see them all up there together in one mob. There's one mama down here by herself. That's because she just had a calf. But other than that, they stick pretty close together. And just to wrap this video up, that is the reason we're doing this, because we raise grass-fed beef. Grass-fed beef, you can't just throw them out on a patch of ground that really there's not much grass, not much desirable for them to eat, and just expect them to grow a good, healthy, also tasty product. But if you work it right, you can grow so many more animals on so much less land if you will start rotating them. And that goes for cows, sheep, goats. What else, Ben?
What's that?
Actually, pigs. You can rotate your pigs. Pigs will actually nibble around on grasses and hay as well. I would just encourage you guys, whatever animals you have, start moving them around. If nothing else, it will help your parasites and you will have a healthier animal.
And there are certain animals, like certain breeds of cattle, that grow better on grass. Grass genetic cows, like we've got some South Pole. We've got a South Pole bull that's breeding a lot of our Angus cows that we're gonna eventually just raise up all these heifers. That's why I'm so excited. We're getting a lot of heifers this year. So
and if you look into the South Poles, they're across of 4 different. So if you can't go into South Poles right now, you might consider some of those breeds that they crossed in to make the South Pole. Just start there.
Here's some of our South Poles coming up. They're really curious, really docile. That's a South Pole, the red one there. Look how fat, healthy she is. The lighter red one is. The darker red one behind her is.
So that is just some of the benefits we've seen from moving our cattle around, whether it's through rotational grazing or where we're feeding hay or whatever the case may be. And I would encourage you guys, this is for a different video, but to look into grass-fed beef and why is it healthier? What is the big deal about it? Beef has gotten a bad rap for a long time for causing cholesterol problems and heart attacks and all those things. And I just personally believe beef is not the culprit. The way we're feeding out our cows is, and that's just my opinion. Cows were never meant to be put up and just fed piles and piles and piles of corn and grains. They were meant to be out grazing like you see these now. And like I mentioned, like you would see cows in the wild. when they do that, when they're fed a grass-based diet, the omega fats and things like that will balance out. You won't have the problems that you read about with the cholesterol problems and getting the omega fats and stuff out of balance. Also, I encourage you to look up linoleic acid. It is beef and dairy products from grass-fed cows are the richest source of linoleic acid, and it's super good for you and super important for your body. So if you want a healthy product, find a farmer near you that's grass feeding, find out how to cook it. You can't just cook it like one that's been fed out on a feedlot. You will have a tough cut of meat if you try to do that. So put some time and effort into learning how to cook it, and your health will thank you. I'll see you guys on the next one. You got anything?
I got a thirst.
You got thirst and hunger? I gotta go feed this man. I'll see you guys later. Come back to our channel if this is your first video you're watching. We'd love to have you stick around and subscribe. See you guys later. Thanks for watching, and God bless.